This episode of Fantastic People is sponsored by Kinetic Realty Services. Kinetic Realty Services exists to help you find home. Their agents understand that home is more than an address. Home is where life happens. It's a place where we experience joy and pain. It's a place where we make memories and build community. Their agents see more than a transaction or a file number. They see the person or family that home represents. Kinetic Realty Services executive sales agents manage the home buying or selling process with care. Kinetic Realty Services strives to provide timely communication, technical excellence, and tailored information for each customer and each home, making sure that from search to close, your home transaction is joyful and professional. Start your home buying or selling process today at kineticrs.com/info. Again, that's kineticrs.com/info. Licensed in Florida and Alabama, Kinetic Realty Services, helping real estate investors find success and helping individuals and families find home.
Welcome back to Fantastic People. I'm Christian.
And I'm Regan, and here with us today is a very special guest, all the way from Georgia, although, of course, like most of our guests, originally from Pensacola, Florida, is Justin Chavers. Justin is a professional stunt performer, performing on stage in musicals, shows, live stunt shows for almost 20 years, and also has recently become a member of the Screen Actors Guild, where he does stunts for a lot of big things you've probably heard of, but definitely most notably recently, the Mandalorian TV show. Is also part of SEAL Team and other TV shows, independent films, stunt doubled for actors on a variety of projects. I'm really excited for this week. Justin, how you doing?
Not so bad. How about you guys?
Doing pretty well. Excited to have you on, Justin. Both you have a really cool job, and you've done things that I know Reagan and I both like a lot. Yeah. Also excited to talk about what you're a fan of when we get to it, because we're also big fans of it. So I think we're in for a good discussion today.
Oh, good. Hey, super honored to be asked to be here. So I'm just happy to be chatting with people.
Yeah, so, man. Go ahead.
Tell me about stunt performing. How did you get into it?
That's right. That's going to go.
Yeah, like I am dying to know.
Yeah, well, one can say I fell into it.
Hey,
that's a stunt pun. You can take that if you want to, or edit it out. It's all good. Yeah, I actually. So, as Reagan mentioned in the intro, I come from a musical theater background. So, I guess I can get into it. I actually moved out from Pensacola after majoring in musical theater at PJC to go work for Disney. I wanted to work for Disney. I was a huge Disney fan. I enjoyed what Walt's dream was, and then, Reagan knows this. I was involved with youth a lot, with church and all that stuff, so I knew I wanted to work with kids and just be around them, like my heart was set for like entertaining kids and family. I was like, oh, Disney, I can totally do that. And I had family. My mom was out there in LA at this point in time. So I had a support group out there with family. I was like, sweet, I'm gonna go out there and try my hand at Disney, right? Got into Disney, worked for Disney for about 3 years doing characters and parades. And because of my size, because I played sports and in high school and just would always, I was a workout guy. I loved lifting and I loved being active. A buddy of mine who was like a stunt actor at the time working at the Jedi Training Academy. I'll throw his name out because I love him to death. RC Orman. You guys don't know him, but I love saying his name because he's the one that helped me. RC was like, hey man, you got a good size on you. Have you ever thought about like doing stunts? And at the time I had no idea that, I mean, I knew what stunts was obviously, but I never knew how to get into it. I never knew the avenue of how or what, when, where, who, how to get into the, to stunts. And he's like, I think you should come and audition for this show called Pirate's Dinner Adventure. And I knew of Pirate's Dinner Adventure. I knew some guys that had worked there just because if you're working in Southern California and you're working at theme parks, you're kind of in a very small circle. If you work at Universal, you know people from Disney. If you work at Disney, you know people from, Medieval Times and Knott's Berry Farm and all that stuff. So I went and auditioned. I didn't get it. And then months later, I was training a little bit more with RC, doing stage combat. And I had martial arts background before this. I took martial arts like Taekwondo when I was a kid. And I worked with him more on like stage combat and stuff like that. And basic tumbling. It's always good to have basic tumbling. In stunts to save you if you fall or something happens to you. You can kind of roll out of it and not break your hand or break your neck, And then I auditioned again months later. Ended up getting the big guy role, Andre the Orange Pirate, for Pirates Thin Adventure. And from there, I learned how to high fall. I learned air awareness on the trampoline. I learned weapons. And then from then, I went to different live shows throughout the years, just learning and working in different things. And then that's how I got into it. I got into stunts from some guy saying, "Hey, you look like, you can move. Do you want to come audition for this show?" And that was it. And that changed my life forever.
That's incredibly cool, man. I mean, yeah, just you got a cool job. You do cool things. And that's a cool story.
Well, I'll do this. I'll get into it. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to take the airway.
You're good.
No, you're
well. Actually, let me be honest with you, because this is part of my testimony. I don't know if your viewers are faith based or whatnot, but I love speaking on this, because without God, I would have never had anything. So, if I may, there was a point in time where I got let go from Disney and didn't have any idea what to do. I was fixing to sign up with the military, and I had auditioned for Pirates probably about maybe a week or two after I got let go from Disney. And I didn't hear anything from them from like 2 or 3 weeks. So obviously I was like, well, I didn't get it. You know what I mean? Yeah. The day, and I was praying hard. I was like signing up for UPS and all this stuff. And this was back in like 2009. I was still a snot-nosed kid, I was like 23 maybe, And the day before, I was like, it was Thursday, and Friday morning I was going to go to a recruiter's office. It's like, all right, here we go. I have nothing I came out here to work for Disney. I don't have Disney. What am I going to do with my life? I have nothing left. Let's do military. I've been wanting to do that for years. That night, 3 weeks later, I get a call from the manager saying, "Hey, man, we want you for Andre. Sorry it's taking so long. We just had some other things going on, but we'd like to have you." I cried right then on the phone. And from that point on, that's when I knew. I was like, okay, God has me in stunts. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. So,
yeah. Well, and I mean, I'll be honest, like that is very evident, because, I mean, I can say going through life, like I see people that do great things, do what they want to do, are very successful. But then you see other people that it just seems like every single step, there's steps backwards, but every single step kind of just leads into the next. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Smoothly, if that makes sense. And yeah, you're totally right. You can see that guidance and see that direction, and see those doors open from my perspective on the outside looking in over all these years. You can see that.
Well, I'm glad it looks smooth.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not. But you can just tell there's favor on your life, and there's favor in the things that you do.
Man, it's like a duck on water. And let me tell you, if the Lord blesses me with kids, I'm going to say, you stay out of entertainment so fast. I do not want them to do the same thing as me.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on, just want to, what are some of your favorite things you've done? What are some, big career accomplishments
you're reading my mind over here right now.
You're welcome.
We're like in sync for the first time, I think, ever on this podcast.
Well, 30 goes, so we finally figured it out.
We got it. Big accomplishments. Oh, geez. Okay. So a lot of questions there. What are the funnest things? I've been, lit on fire. That's always fun to be lit on fire. Lighting people on fire. It's always fun. Obviously in the safest, performance manner as possible. Some of the shows that I've been blessed to do has me back going toward like a musical theater background almost. So getting to like dance and, I dance as Deadpool. I've, there's a variety show that we have. I say a variety, it's like a parody show every Halloween at the Knott's Berry Farm turns into Knott's Scary Farm. We have the show called The Hanging there that just makes fun of everything pop culture in the past year and kills everybody at the same time too. It's very, PG-13, and dancing and being Deadpool, one of the funnest characters in entertainment history. It was a blast. I've worked with Make-A-Wish as Batman to a kid's Robin. His wish was to be Robin, and thankfully we knew the police officer that deals with kind of the kid program. So we worked with him and the city of Anaheim and Buena Park in Southern California. And before Bat Kid, I know people has heard of like Bat Kid before and San Francisco. Before that happened, we had done something way cooler. And we had the kid go around and like fight, bad cowboys and fight pirates. And we got to go in a helicopter over the city of Anaheim and like fly around Disneyland over the top of that, which is a no-fly zone. So it was super cool. As this big kid, I think I was having more fun than he was, up in the helicopter dressed as Batman and Robin, flying over Disneyland.
That's super awesome.
Oh man, it was a blast. Thankfully, the kid is fine. His leukemia has since regressed, and he is doing wonderfully. So, it was a big. It's been a wonderful memory and experience to have as well.
That's cool.
Yeah. Some of the other things, I guess, what I'm super proud of. I helped open a show called Marvel Universe Live. That was an experience, but I was super proud of the way I was able to help out and put in, to the parts that I was in. Obviously, the director overall had it the same, but each of us had individual parts, and I don't know how to say it. I guess our own. I don't know. We could put our own choreography a little bit, our own little flavor on different parts that we did in the show. And I was super happy with how the director liked the stuff that I was putting in as well, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It gives you that freedom a little bit to be the part.
Yes. Thank you. And then, closed some really fun shows. Was honored to. I know sometimes closing shows doesn't sound as good as it is, but I was honored to be able to close the Terminator show, Universal Studios Hollywood. There was another show during Halloween time at that point in time that people still talk about, called the Bill and Ted's Halloween Adventure. People still talk about it, that we missed that show so much. It was such a staple. It just having those kind of like those honors, I guess, is always fun.
Yep.
And then obviously, buying, getting into SAG, getting my vouchers, getting into SAG, and then working on Mandalorian was.
There you go. There it is.
Cool.
Yeah. Man, I'll be honest. Like, again, watching your career just sort of in the distance through social media. I mean, I would say three coolest things I've seen you do, and you've done a lot of cool things that I didn't even really know about until we started talking about having you on. Was being a part of the Marvel stuff that you did very early on. And then knowing that you were part of Terminator 2, which I've seen that show multiple times, and then I unfortunately didn't get to see it when you were in it, but that's a super cool involved show, and so to be a part of that seems really cool. But then, of course, to watch the end of Mandalorian season 2 and like fully taken in that moment, and then probably maybe a couple hours later, maybe the next day, just scrolling through Facebook and I see a post from you and I'm like, oh yeah, he's talking about Mandalorian. Wait, I have to scroll back up and I'm like, hold on a second. He was in it. Like, how cool is that?
Oh man.
To know somebody that's like in Star Wars. I mean, and I don't know, I'm sure your character might have a name, but I'm sure somebody somewhere will make a big deal out of that one day. It's cool because
a whole fan fiction.
Seriously, I don't know if you guys know. I didn't know about this until watching the gallery of Mandalorian. I think it was season 2. There's a guy that I forget. He's got a name in Empire Strikes Back, I think.
Okay.
But he's running by. It's like an extra, and he's holding this thing. It's nothing. It's actually a homemade ice cream maker.
Yeah.
That's like decorated to look like some fantastical, futuristic prop. And there's literally 2 things I'm gonna say about this. Literally at I found out at Star Wars not weekend. What's the
Galaxy's Edge
conference? What's the conference every year?
Oh, Celebration.
Yeah, Star Wars Celebration. There is a walk of whatever this guy's name is, and literally all of the people cosplaying him at Star Wars Celebration do like a parade holding their homemade ice cream makers that have been decorated into this. And he's just an extra just running by, and a little half-second blip, you see him go by. And fan culture's made a thing out of it. And now at season 1, Mandalorian.
That's where he gets the best.
That's where he gets the best card. They took that and made it into a real.
That's wonderful.
So you never know, man. One day your character might have an action figure.
Well, my character's dead.
Well, but you'll have an action figure and people will cosplay you at different cons.
I was so upset when I walked in on that set for the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I know exactly where I am. And I had to tell the other guy that was playing the other stunt guy who was opposite on the other side of Bib Fortuna. I was like, dude, do you know where we are? And he's an older guy, and I mean, he's done hundreds of different things, but like maybe he's not as nerd as I am. And I was like, do you know where we are? He goes, no. I was like, dude, we're in freaking Jabba the Hutt's place.
That's awesome.
And oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And I was just like, and then obviously when I saw the 2 characters that I get killed by, I was so upset because I was like, no, because the last time I had seen Ming-Na Wen was when Mando left her for dead in season 1.
Oh yeah, so
that's true.
You didn't even have a clue going in.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't know what episode we were filming. I never know. I go in just, hey, do you want to do stunts? Yeah, I'll come. Sure. Don't tell me anything. I'm just going to show up that day and do whatever needs to be done. But afterwards, you see Tamora, and at first we had a rehearsal, so they just kind of on like sweat, their pajama pants, like a sweater on, and I knew Tamora because I'd followed his career for years, just who he is,
Right.
And I was like, no, I was dying. It's like, no, I know exactly what's happening. And then sure enough, they put their stuff on, and
actual stuff on.
I was like, gosh dang it, I can't tell anyone about this.
That's crazy. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like, you saw it.
You knew Boba Fett was back
before anybody
months before the whole world knew. That's awesome, man.
Well, at the end of it, and you didn't even know what it was at the time. That's amazing. So did you know?
I had no idea.
Did you know going in, like, they didn't tell you any details going in? I mean, I'm just curious about this for a second.
Very hush hush. In fact, there was even a code word. There's usually code words for hush projects. I'm not going to give away the code word because that would be but at first, I'll tell you, I went to, so when I first the first episode that I did, episode 1 with the Marshal, I had went in, they had told me the code word, and I went and looked it up because I didn't know it was going to be a code word, right? So I looked it up. Sorry about that. Online, and I'm looking at this. There's an actual show of the code word, and I'm like, oh, what is this?
Oh, wow.
Weird. And it said like, so the show was like based in like northern Minnesota, and like it was like two like kids, like maybe like emo kids, and I'm like, okay, like where's the stunts in this show, right? So I go in and they're like, okay, well, you're going to be, minor number 2, minor, right? They say minor. Okay, well, that makes sense. Like Minnesota, there's a lot of mines up there. Okay, maybe there's a mine in, fell, something like that, right?
Right.
A cave collapse, whatever. I was like, okay, this makes sense. And they're putting like coveralls over me, I'm like, okay, I'm clearly this, But then they start adding different, like the costumers, right? And at this fitting, they start adding different things on this miner's clothing, like accessories. And I'm like, well, this doesn't look like what miners should wear if they're fixing to die. This looks maybe a little more sci-fi-esque, like a Fifth Element sort of thing, And I go, so what is this? And I talked to the customer. I was like, so what is this? And they're like, we're not really supposed to say. I'm like, oh, okay. I just, I had mentioned the word, and I was like, is this a show on like Amazon Prime, whatever? And they're like, if you look over there, you'll understand.
Figure it out. That's funny.
And I look to my left, like slowly, just kind of like, what's over there? And there's a couch, just a regular couch with a throw pillow on the couch. And the throw pillow says, it just says Star Wars on it. And I, with eyes wide open, I'm like, what does that mean? Like, that's awesome. Because the first season had not come out yet by the time we were filming the first episode for season 2. So I still had no idea. I was like, what is this? And like a whole bunch of like screws and gears are going on in my mind going, what is this? Is this and she's just like, if you look up live action, Disney Plus, because Disney Plus hadn't come out at that point either. It was it hadn't just launched because it launched with Mandalorian. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
And I'd heard about it. I had heard, like you hear whispers of Mandalorian. No one really knew what it was, Like we knew it was like, okay, in Mandalorian, like who are we following? Are we following? No one knew.
Yeah.
So I get done with the fitting and I go back to my car and I'm looking it up. And it's sure enough, Mandalorian, like live action Mandalorian. And I go, oh God, like,
awesome. I'm sure that was a crazy experience.
I called Haley and like, you start getting kind of like tears in your eyes, like, oh God, I'm fixing to be part of something, like, oh geez.
That's so cool.
And
that's so cool.
And the bad thing is, oh, you guys still there?
Yeah.
Okay, so my computer just went off. The crazy thing is because working at Disney, we had a lot of our friends worked at the Jedi Training Academy at Disneyland. So we know tens and hundreds of nerds, that are really good friends. And I couldn't tell a soul.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's super cool, man.
That's cool. That episode was directed by Jon Favreau too, right?
So John was there, and what a cool guy he was.
Yeah.
I even had to ask him a question, about, hey, sir, what do you want us to do in this movement here? Do you want us to run? And he goes, oh, that's a good question. You know what? Let's do it one way, and then if it doesn't work, then we'll do it the other way. I go, yes, sir. All right. And I was just like, no director usually talks to stunt guys like that. It's usually they have the stunt coordinator come in and give us the direction, the chain of command.
Right.
Yeah.
Super cool guy. I was like, you know what? I am forever your fan now. You know what? I've been a fan of yours, for all this time, obviously. But you know what? Now you have support. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
super cool
guy.
I am the president of the Jon Favreau fan club. I harp up everything that guy does, even Cowboys versus Aliens. I watch all of them.
Great concept, right? Great concept. Just
yeah.
Well, we've talked a lot about what you do, and we probably could keep talking
Yeah,
about it.
absolutely.
We have plenty more questions, but what we're here to do is talk about what you're a fan of.
Oh,
So,
God.
Justin, what are you a fan of?
Oh man, I'm a fan of Dungeons and Dragons.
Amen.
Nerd alert.
Yeah.
Like D&D is on the mainstream now.
Yeah, it's mainstream. Absolutely.
It
It's
really
not-
is. You know what? I'm still the guy that'll call somebody nerd and nerd and be playing and have dice in my hands. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
When did you first experience D&D?
Yeah. So great, funny story. So I was doing a show at Universal Studios with a dear brother of mine, and we had been close. We worked together 4 days a week, 8 hours a day. So we got close, and he started talking about D&D, and I'm like, honestly, and Reagan, I don't know if and Christian, you're from Pensacola as well too.
I graduated Old Tate High School, man.
Aggies.
What year? How do I not know you?
I graduated in 07.
Oh, baby. No, not at all. So in Pensacola, the group I hung around, I'd never heard of D&D before, and maybe that I didn't have my ears perked up or whatever, So
It was pretty deep level nerd at that point. I don't even
Yeah.
think musical theater would have been involved in that.
You think so? Not at all. I did not hear about D&D once growing up, and I'm super upset about that. But so, he was explaining to me about D&D, and he plays it, online, people were whatever. And I was like, okay, whatever. And he was like, he had the book open, like during, our break time. He was reading the player's handbook. I'm like, gosh, like, no way. Like, that's not me at all. Like, have fun. And he's like an anime guy, but he's also like an Army Ranger.
Oh, wow.
So it was funny to see that kind of juxtaposition, a word to use, where you're like Army Ranger on this side and like total anime nerd on this side, like it's just super different, but to see him have this, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool, whatever. And he had already got me on Pokemon Go, and I hated that because it took away my life. Like I said, I wasn't that person. I just wasn't, like that was just nerd stuff to me. Like, no, I'm not doing Pokemon. That's a child's thing, because I was, older when that thing came out. So it just was never on my radar. But he told me about his character, and he goes, yeah, I'm playing a Dragonborn barbarian named Drogdor. And I go, excuse me? And he goes, yeah, I'm playing as Drogdor. And I was like, what do you mean you're playing as Drogdor? Because growing up, I for real knew who Drogdor was. I mean, that was in my everyday like lingo as Drogdor and Strong Bad and all those guys from Home. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, we can have hours talking about
do impersonations later, I guess.
Oh man, and I was like, "What do you mean that you're playing as Drogdor?" He goes, "Yeah," and like he was explaining to me about all this thing and what he could do, and he started letting me listen because he would record his interactions. They were playing on some kind of like audio file, audio something like this, right? And I was like, you have to tell me more. And he goes, read the book. Here's the book. He gave me his book. He goes, here's the book. Just read through it. You pick out your class, you pick out your race. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was like a light bulb came on going, where has this been all my life? Mm-hmm. Yep. So I had immediately, picked a character. And that was 4 going on 5 years ago.
Wow.
And I dived head first into that D&D world. And I was asking about it online, and people were like, get somebody who can give you a one shot, you need to play it. Also listen to Critical Role. And I was like, okay, whatever Critical Role. I don't know what that is. And I think Critical Role had just started to, really finding some traction. I don't know if you guys know who Critical Role is.
I have listened to all of Critical Role twice.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm an avid Critical Role listener, which a person may be like, only twice. We're talking about like 500 hours of content.
Over 100, 100 plus episodes, and I mean
500 hours per season.
And I've done both seasons.
I mean, it's what, 3-4 hours an episode? 100 plus episodes first campaign, and I think I'm 4 episodes behind right now. But anyway,
I watch every Thursday night.
I'm nowhere close to caught up, but I'm at least on campaign 2.
So
I probably spend like $300 a year on Critical Role merch. I'm all in.
Yeah,
we just got our Funko Pop of Vex and Grog. So
awesome.
And then we just got the Tal'Dorei. We just got the Volume 1 Vox Machina Origins, and all that stuff. So yeah, we're Critical Role people. We're critters, right?
Yep, that's it.
And then Travis and so to get to that, Travis, obviously all those guys are, voice actors. Haley started becoming a voice actor, so like we're getting, she's getting into that world. And then her, Laura Bailey and Travis are like our spirit animals. Like we're almost the exact same. Travis kind of has a similar story of his coming up. Like he was an athletic guy and loved working out. And then like his imagination, and actually it was cool at a WonderCon. We get to go up and ask questions at one of the Vox Machinas, and I have it on my YouTube. My buddy behind me filmed the whole thing, filmed the whole interaction, and I had my Travis wore a shirt in one of the last episodes of Campaign 1, and it said Dungeons and Dragons and Deadlifts. It's like, oh my gosh, forget it. That's my shirt. I need that shirt, right? So we had our friend. We couldn't find it online. So we had our friend make that shirt for me. So I wore my Dungeons and Dragons and Deadlift shirt to this WonderCon thing. And the minute he saw it, I went up to the microphone. He goes, "Whoa, nice shirt!" And I was like, "This is your shirt, like this,
Yeah. And
my question to him was kind of simple. It's like, "Hey, I come from a stunt background. How did you go from being active and being in sports into, voice acting? And can we even lift, bro?" And he's like, bro, deadlifts for days, my man. And then he explained, like, hey, I have an overactive imagination. So all the melee and all that stuff, just came naturally, to him through Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Like, yeah, I've always had like ADD, and I, raised as the only child, so my imagination, and now I'm in, stunts and performing, and like, oh, this makes so much sense,
Right.
But
you came from like a musical theater background, and so there is a sense of ownership and being this character that you're playing, and a performance in regard to it. And I mean, role playing is such a you said like you wish you'd played it when you're younger, and I think everyone who discovers it when they're older says the exact same thing. And I certainly think role playing is a big part of that, because it allows you to express things about yourself that you normally don't. And not saying maybe you would, but that by being someone who you're not, you learn more about who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, man, it's just such a gift to be able to sit around a table and tell a story with a person and not have the pressures of everyday life, and getting to be somebody new and make decisions that you yourself probably wouldn't make.
Yeah. Well, and for me, what I've experienced in playing is that, when I look back in my days in drama in high school and in theater, we would do the improv exercises, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those were always so intimidating, especially because you always had that one kid in the group that was like really good at it. And so then you get up there and you sound like an idiot because you freeze up and you can't think of anything. And because you're literally making up everything about it.
Yeah.
Like there's no context, or very, very little context to what you're doing.
And you want to be funny, people always want to be funny and ad-lib and stuff.
Or you want to try to be, really creative and like, oh, that was so good.
Right.
But in D&D or in any sort of role-playing game like that, there is context.
Mhm.
Like all the
Yep.
story
Mhm.
context and the framework is made for you. And so all you have to do is be a person reacting or thinking through the situation that's already been painted for you. And everyone else around you, which in that situation is kind of like the audience, also understands and can see and can visualize and imagine the context. You're not responsible for any of that. Where I feel like for improv, you're responsible for making sure the audience knows what the context of the thing you're doing is.
You're determining it by
what you're doing.
saying.
Yeah,
your
and that
actions.
there's so much you have to communicate. Whereas you're just free to do and be and react and respond in a game.
Well, that's the challenge. That's the duck on water part for the DM, right? You know,
Right.
like you get a good DM, you get a bad DM, and you're gonna have to drag this story along. But obviously, you know, you get a good DM.
Well, that's the kid that was really good at improv and painting the picture. Like they're the DM, and everybody else gets to play.
Yeah. I never did improv, but I always end up DMing. So.
I feel like the good DM is the guy who's sat in the corner drawing those anime characters by himself and creating things on his own, and having that world, while he's sitting in the corner, eating his lunch by himself, which is so sad. And not to say, Christian, that you're not, I've DM too. I was never like that. But I mean, like, usually the best DMs are those guys who are just like, are very, they're reading all the time.
Your imagination's far ahead of everybody else's.
Far ahead.
Well, yeah, I think the reading and you even talk about the drawing. I think those are important things because to DM a game, I think effectively, and this may sound like a cheat code. I don't care. People use it. Pull from things you know.
Yeah.
If you know, if for example, we've all watched Indiana Jones, and you are, you want your players to make some sort of an escape. Model, like the opening of whatever the Raiders of the Lost Ark,
right?
And create a scenario where they're like constant skill checks. You have to run out as fast as you can. It's timed. Even set your phone on the table and say you have 2 minutes and it's counting down. What are you doing? All right, everyone make a strength check and put your players in a scenario. But a lot of the pressure of being a DM is coming up with creative things.
Right.
And you don't have to do that. Pull on things that you know or you have experienced and learn a way to present it to your campaign or your players or in your one shot or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, not to get off on our game, sir, but I think you do that well. I mean, it's
thank you.
We've played games. We've played games where people around the table are like, "Oh, this is like the Mummy, isn't it?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "Yeah, totally ripped it off the Mummy." But it's still fun and it's still engaging because it's a creative, fun way to do it. But also going back to your friend Justin that introduced you to it. I mean, he played Troctor. Like, that's amazing. By the way, like now I want to go back to a game and create a similar
Dragonborn.
Right? Like, of course, that's perfect. But he didn't try to create something brand new. He created something based around a framework.
He knew.
He already knew.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of us do that. I mean, going back to Christian, your point about it's the different parts of ourselves that we didn't know. I mean, and I've shared this before. I've shared this on our previous episodes. My character that I play most often is really what I view as the deepest, darkest parts of me. So I kind of step out of,
it's your id,
the good moral. Yeah, it is. It's my Wario or my what's the Luigi anyway?
Waluigi.
Waluigi. Yeah, I step out of the responsible, moral decision maker and do the things that I would never do in real life.
What's your character, Regan?
He's a rogue thief, and sort of the chaotic neutral.
I would put Thorn's chaotic neutral.
Yeah.
What's his race?
Half elf.
Half elf.
Okay.
Well, half elf, wood elf.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Yeah, I mean, but again, it allows you to do that, and I didn't model it out. I didn't try to create something, so bizarre and creative. It was just a part of my self-awareness that manifested into this character. And we've played the other ones. I've played the total idiot who has to stand there quietly and can't make decisions because
you make your characters for one shots,
Right. Yeah, you do those, but my recurring character is somebody that's testing out those parts of myself, and it's from the framework of something I already know. And I think too many people get intimidated by that creativity piece of it. they get intimidated by it, and you don't have to.
That's kind of a responsibility of both the DM and other players when you're introducing. Is like, it seems like a lot, but what do you want to do?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I think, not saying it was wrong. I'm glad giving someone a player's handbook can be a little too much for some people. And so a lot of times when I have a new player, I tell them, don't worry about it. Just come and we'll build your character together. You and I will sit before we play. We'll build it together, and I'll have a copy of your, player sheet, and I'll help you through the game so that you can learn how to do it. And so many people, I think, want to try it, but are just too afraid.
Yeah.
Should we actually let your viewers know, maybe because some don't? Because I actually had this question. I was telling somebody about this on set the other day, and they're like, what's D&D? Like, what system do you play on? And I go, oh, sit down. There's a lot to tell you.
Yeah, well, we've done one on
great point.
tabletop RPGs, but we didn't go in specifics on D&D. So obviously Dungeons & Dragons, role-playing tabletop game where it involves rolling dice on its 5th edition. We play standard 5th edition rules.
Right.
Yeah, we do too.
Now, the great thing about D&D, and I love this about both the Player's Handbook and the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide, that it's like it'll give you a blurbage on a rule, and then it immediately is like, feel free to adjust rule for however you want to play the game.
Yep.
So because it encourages creativity and encourages ownership. And the best part, I find about Dungeons and Dragons that's so much fun is, it is at the very bottom. It's a group of friends getting together to tell a story.
Right.
And the DM may have, checkpoints. He may know the chapters, but the players are writing the words on the page.
Right.
I always tell people it's a narrative adventure.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think for those that are like, oh, that sounds great, it still sounds intimidating. To me, my journey to playing Dungeons and Dragons was really initially through being a kid playing video games.
Yeah.
And, so many, again, video games are very popular, way more mainstream today. They're stories. They're in-depth stories that you, the player, get to navigate through and play in the sandbox, right? Well, most of those games are built on D&D mechanics.
Yeah.
But they're just plugged into a computer. So the DM is the Dungeon Master, is the programmer.
Yeah, any turn-based system game you've played is pretty much based
on D&D, things. So while I had heard about it as a kid or middle school, high school, it always was way too deep level nerd for me to get into.
Right. Yeah.
I had heard about it, but I was like, oh, that sounds a bit too far for me. I had experienced it through TV shows in college, but the whole time I've been playing video games. And when I finally did the same thing you did, Justin, listened to Critical Role, my eyes were open. I was like, I've literally been doing this for years, except it's more manual, which is more fun because, again, it's that collective storytelling. It's that collective game that you get to play, and the limits are off. The limits are totally
you can
off.
do anything.
In a computer game, you're limited by whatever the programmer, you can walk as far as you want to walk to hit that digital wall where you can see the mountain, but you can never go to.
That's funny that you say that, Reagan, because
you can go. You just go. If the DM lets you, you might have checks along the way, but you can try it. And Matt Mercer's famous line, well, you can certainly try.
One of my favorite memories from the start of my D&D was I was watching, Critical Role, and everyone plays video games, and like you said, like you can only do so much. Going around playing Skyrim, there's only certain questions that you can ask, as your character, and one of the first episode that I saw for Critical Role was entering into Craghammer or something like that, right?
Yep.
The group enters, and they're asking for some guards or some city guards a place to sleep, right? An inn to sleep at. And one of the guards is like, "Oh, you want to go to the pig pen?" I'm like, oh, what's the pig pen? That sounds like it's a dingy place. He's like, oh, it's right over there, And I guess someone rolled like a low persuasion check, and it's basically like a pen of pigs.
Right.
Okay, But then I think either Scanlan's character or Vex, Laura Bailey's character, Scanlan's character, Sam's character, Scanlan.
Yeah.
They went up to the guards and they like gave him like a couple of gold coins, and the guy took it and bit it down to see if it was real, and he was, you're gonna want the nice ends, and it's up the street there. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you can do anything.
Yeah,
like you can do, and that opened my mind to what D&D can be, could be, all that stuff,
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man, that is way more submersive and interactive and free, rather than Skyrim or any other game that you have to. And it was wonderful.
Yeah, well, and to me, and I would say this to anybody, because I don't think we did this last time. Anybody that's listening and has thought about it before, or thought it was the evil game from the devil, and you're like, oh, that sounds intriguing. If you like reading books, if you like watching movies, if you like playing video games, if you like, playing Power Rangers in your backyard as a kid, you will enjoy Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Those things, but you're in control with so many more tools. It's a game of chance. If you like games of chance, if you just like trying things to see if you can get away with it, it's the game for you.
The funny thing that I, both in Critical Role and what you're talking about, I think connects both is the people who pretend to not know what they're doing are always the best player. So if you're a new person and you come in and you aren't really you haven't kind of explored all these different avenues and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to try this. And that always ends up being the most genius moment of the game.
Yeah.
The reason why I say connect to Critical Role is Sam and Travis always pretend like they have no idea, and they are hands down the best players at that table.
What was I going to say? I went in my buddy had heard about me wanting to do D&D, and he's starting to run a campaign for his youth at the church. And I was like, yeah, let me hop in and see what it's like. Let me get some playing time. And you always think, when I had my first character, I was so happy with this character. It was like the most like me. It was like a half orc paladin, and all that stuff, which I still play. He's my go-to character because he's most like me, but I've written a really great backstory and story for him. Anyway, and I thought, like, oh, I'm going to be this cool guy who comes in swinging, super awesome. And then you roll natural ones and you're like, wait, wait a minute. That's not how this is supposed to go. I'm supposed to be awesome. And the wonderful thing about D&D, and it teaches you to roll with the punches, and failure, it could be fun. It could, and also failure helps you think about other ways to get around something. And I love that.
I love that you said that because I just was tweeting about this the other day. There is a thing about like video games, right? Where if you fail, you go back to your last checkpoint, you try it again. And you try, you're like, okay, now I know the right button combination. I'm going to beat this guy this time.
Let me go grind to build up my strength and come back.
Exactly. And in D&D, there's none of that. And so this guy was tweeting about, people lying about their rolls. Like if you can't see their roll and they actually have a critical failure and they lie about it. And he's like, I'm not going to correct them. And I also am not going to correct a person. It's a game, whatever. Right. If you want to cheat, that's on you.
Although
you have to
called me out before.
Yep, I have called you out because I could tell you. However, what I would encourage people to do is take the critical failure because it leads you to an entirely new place, and that is, while uncomfortable, is what makes the game special.
Yeah, well,
that's what makes the game fun.
Yes,
and I've said this before, and again, and I just confess to lying about my roles before. I have found that again, in the world of Dungeons and Dragons or any tabletop RPG that's similar, there's really no consequences. There really isn't. There's no
No.
real life
No,
consequences.
they're
Okay.
So
it's a game in your imagination,
right? And same thing with a video game, but those video games have parameters that
Mhm.
you know it's limited in how much you can fail or how much you can succeed at something.
Yeah.
And with enough determination and patience and time, you can waste and grind and get past that obstacle. Whereas, like to your point in Dungeons and Dragons, you have to try again, but with a different approach. You have to try something new. And in real life, I think, at least for myself, and I've learned this, I'm way more hesitant to take risks because, well, what if I fail? I think we're all like that. There's some level of us that holds back from big
Absolutely.
risk because what if I fail?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Dungeons and Dragons, you can try the thing, and what if I fail means that okay, maybe the game went differently than I thought, but I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to go home, I'm going to go lay down on my bed, and I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to wake up, and I'm going to go to my safe job. But in the game, at least I tried something new, or I tried something and failed and was forced to think about it a different way and accomplish that thing and actually learn about yourself and your ability to do those things. I think it truly has an impact on self-awareness, on self-growth, on your character in the game and out of the game. It affects you.
I don't know if you guys have it in front of you, but the questionnaire you guys sent me, I listed a couple of different reasons why I think everyone should play D&D. And what you're talking about, Reagan, is your self growth, critical thinking. Is a big factor for D&D if you're really into it, right? If you get into it, and group, like working with a group.
Yep.
Like no one wants to do that in high school or college. It's always a pain in the butt. But I guarantee if you're playing D&D when you're a kid with your dad or your mom, whatever, leading you through it, and you start learning how to work as a group, you'll get to high school and college, and it's going to be simple. It's I've done this before. I know how to work with a group. Oh, I know how to deal with this chaotic person that's not doing anything, or this strict person who's wanting all the rules. You figure out I know how to do that now.
Yeah.
Small talking. Like I used to be terrible at small talking, like going up to so in stunts, to be known, we don't have agents or anything. You go up to coordinators on set and you got to hustle. It's called hustling. And basically you have to present yourself, in 2 or 3 minutes of interaction saying, hey, this is me. This is what I'm good at. Please hire me. You know what I mean?
Right.
I used to be terrible at small talk and asking questions and figuring people out. D&D has opened up my mind on how to small talk so hard that I will always be thankful for it. And, it just gives you the ability to, not only asking so many questions, but asking the right questions too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because you can ask a lot of questions, but if it's the right question, you may not be able to go down that right tunnel. You know what I mean? The tunnel with all the dragons in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, oh my gosh, I know I listed a whole bunch of stuff on there, but
Yeah.
Well, it's just like us sitting here talking about it. I kind of thought of a scenario that I think would play out really well as an example for what kind of everything we're talking about. So if you're playing D&D and you're presented with, let's say, a trap or an encounter, and you roll a critical failure, and me as a DM, let's say it's a trap and there's a curse on this item or something, and you roll a critical failure, and I say, unfortunately now your character is blinded. And this blindness, whether I tell you or not, only is curable by greater restoration.
Right.
Say your cleric isn't high enough to have spell slots that can cast greater restoration. And you as a player will be like, well, what am I going to do? And I'm going to tell you, you need to figure out a way to play this character as a blind person. And you know what? You know what will happen is I bet when your cleric learns greater restoration, you don't take it. You keep playing it because now you've changed. You've changed how you play the game. You've changed how you think. You've changed how you communicate. You change how you interact, and you may find that you enjoy it more. Because it's a different challenge.
Yeah, to your point, and I know I've said this before, but I'm gonna say it again because it's true. While I said earlier, I typically pick one character that I've really developed, and so I really know that character. One of the most fun games I've ever played was when I chose to go a different route. I chose to play, the brute, dumb brute of the campaign, because I'm so used to being the decision maker, or the one that always has an opinion and can influence the choices the group makes. But I had fun because while I had all these ideas spinning around in my head of, oh, we should do this, or oh, I'm just going to do this, or, oh, we should do that, I had to really stop and think
Mm-hmm.
differently, because my character would not say, or my character would not do whatever idea I was coming up with. So
Mm-hmm.
two things. One, in order to do anything, I had to think and do as a dumb person would do. And that usually was things that were contrary to what my natural self would do, based on that character. And two, I had to figure out how to get the group to do something that I wanted them to do without saying exactly what I
Mm-hmm.
need them to do, or without being obvious, because I had to be kind of like off in the other direction that seems totally random and stupid, but forces the rest of the group to make those decisions that I'm wanting them to get at, which is fun. If you have the capacity to get outside of yourself a little bit, that is fun, because you're approaching things a totally different way. Again, with no
Yep.
consequences.
I'm going to
Totally.
piggyback on you, Reagan, and say that's actually the stream that we're on right now. I've been playing this character for about a year and a half. Oh, no, 2 years now. And he is the complete opposite of everything that I am, that Justin Chavers is. He is basically an elf wizard with like high intelligence. If that gives you an idea of who I am. High
Right.
intelligence, low charisma, because usually I'm always thinking 2 steps ahead, and I'm kind of usually with my original character, my half orc paladin. He's got charisma. He can speak. He likes to listen to people. And figure out how to help them or whatever. He's strong. This wizard that I'm playing is not strong. He's okay dex, low constitution, high intelligence, low wisdom, low charisma, and he's gotten into a lot of trouble because of things. And he's very curious, right? He likes touching things. He likes kind of speaking when maybe he shouldn't have, or he's not the voice of the group, like Justin tends to be. So his character is Nitzage. It's Justin backwards. There's your creativeness for you. Nitzage just got kidnapped, actually, and he went through some strenuous torture. And so now I have to figure out how to play someone who has been in a rough spot for about a week of like hard torture. And for me, in acting wise, right, it's really cool to kind of go and research people and how they've come out of it, or what struggles they've been through, maybe PTSD and stuff like that, to get a better understanding of how to play this character. And not even as an actor, as a person of this world, as a humane, human being, it's been opening my eyes to be like, oh my gosh, like it's not just black and white. You know what I mean? It's given me a chance to kind of dig into how people have overcome things, or are still in the crap. If if I may be so frank or crass in saying that.
Well,
and it's been wonderful. I'm so sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
no, you're good. To your point, I mean, it helps you see that there might be something else going on under the surface for people,
Yeah.
in that perspective, and I can agree with that. I mean, real quickly, in my day job, I process mortgages for people, and work a lot with military people, and every now, I'd say once every 2 to 3 months, I'll come across an individual who has serious PTSD and has dealt with serious mental struggles from their time in the military, and that was something I had never encountered before.
Yeah.
But because of being open, to your point, through Dungeons and Dragons, can see from someone else's perspective the things they say, the things that they do, the way that they act.
Being blinded. know?
Yeah. No, how that impacts a person
Yep.
Yeah.
can change how they interact with the rest of the world around them. And
Mm-hmm.
we can take for granted and assume that everyone's just like me. And so why would he do that? Or he's a horrible person for that, or he's a crazy idiot, when really there's something else underneath the surface there that's causing that. Which
Mm-hmm.
again, if a game, it's a game, but if it
Right.
allows, if you really get into it and allow it to affect you, it can
Mm.
actually change you as a person and how you react to the world, which means it's more than just a game. It's
In
fun.
the best way too.
Yeah.
You know what I
In
mean?
a really great way.
Because then you get to
Um,
interact that way with the people you're with,
mhm.
and instead of it just being a nonchalant game of, you come in and you play for 3 hours and you leave.
Right.
There's a heaviness. There's
Mhm.
a substance in the game that you're playing. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And then we have an audience of 40 to 60 people every
Mhm.
Tuesday night,
Mhm.
and there's points in times where we've got guys telling us, not guys, I mean guys in general, people in general, saying, "Hey guys, you guys helped me through a time during
Right.
the COVID, to feel welcomed and to go through problems with me, have that connection." And oh God, like, and obviously we start, like tearing up, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, geez, this can really impact, and we see that through Critical Role, obviously, of the community they've built, and it's just, man.
I mean, I think that's a kind of a good way to transition here. You're talking about how the effect it's had here in the present and what's going on in the world. What do you think the future is going to hold? How do you think, not just definitely for you and your stream, but also for Dungeons and Dragons or Critical Role, like it is affecting the world around us right now. How is that effect going to continue in the future?
What do you want to see? Yeah.
I think it can only get positive. Well, in a grand scheme of things, obviously you have those groups that, you have those DMs and players that still butt heads about different things, and whatnot. I think in the grand scheme, I think, once it, and it's been going mainstream, right? I know a lot of stunt people now who play it. And that's just been wonderful. I think the future, Critical Role is already showing what the future can hold for this, and there's tons of people streaming this, on their Twitch or on their YouTube, and they're able to create. And I think that's what it is, in its nutshell. It's a creative process. It's a creative endeavor. Critical Role is making their own, their own, animated series.
Right.
Yeah, I donated money to that.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
Still waiting on my return on investment there.
there you go. I mean, they had a record for Kickstarter. You know what I mean? Like, holy cow! Like, what a community they have built. And if that just makes, for me, if that makes the world a little smaller, that people can be with each other and watch together and laugh and cry and all that stuff, you can't beat that in an entertainment sense. You know what I mean? And that's what we try. Like, we are so thankful. Like, they started, the people who started the channel that I'm on started to, create and just to perform, and now we've got a following of like 4,000, I think, follow the channel, and man, like, what a cool community. And I'll even tell you this. So Haley and I work for a camp called Royal Family Kids Camp every summer. Obviously not last summer, but we've been doing that for, 10, 11 years. And the camp deals with ages 6 to 11 through the foster care system. Specifically abused and neglected kids. So it's a wonderful camp, and we show God's love, and it's just wonderful. But we, a couple of years ago, we had asked the stream, "Hey guys, if you guys want to, give any kind of donation. All your donations will go to getting a kid to camp. It's like a couple $100 to sponsor a kid. And to stream, like people send in like $500. We were crying, and then like we had the kids, we went to camp, we had the kids sign this huge plastered board that my wife had made, that said Perception Studio. It's the channel that we're on. And, and we brought it back and gave it as a gift to the channel, and then gave out like postcards of, the small size of that to people who had donated and all that stuff. And it's like, guys, you don't know who we are. Not really, but you gave of yourselves money to help a kid that you will never meet, to go. And it's just like, if that's the future of what D&D and streaming and can be, God, put it on cable. You know what I mean? Like, goodness, like put it where people are going to be able to see this, because I guarantee I'll put Critical Role up against any series right now. With the storytelling and the characters and the emotion, you know what I mean? I will put it up against any show right now that's on TV.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that's a great place to end, because you summed it up perfectly. Mm-hmm. D&D is capable. It sounds cliche and dumb, but D&D is able to, you can change the world. I mean, it really can. It'll change your personal life, and has the power to motivate and unite people in a way that makes them have a positive influence on the world.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, we've touched on it. You've touched on it quite a bit, but I do want to know, you talked about the stream that you're a part of. Tell us just real quick, what is it? Where can people find it?
Yep.
How can they experience it, follow you guys? And if there's anything in the future for that coming up, what's that look like for you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk about it. So the channel is Perception Studio, and it's on Twitch. Twitch is just an online streaming service. Most people, will play. You guys know. I guess maybe you guys can tell your viewers better than I can of what Twitch is.
You know.
Yeah, Twitch.tv, it's a self-streaming service.
Yeah. I mean, there it is. Thanks. Perception Studio, we run games throughout the week. The e-ticket, I should say, show is their Wednesday night show called Perception Check, and that's played with a bunch of, they call them felted friends, but the guys who run it are ex-Disney puppeteers. So some of them have worked with Jim Henson. Wow. So they're an amazing puppeteer group and just storytellers, and so their puppets will play D&D. And it's vulgar, it's crass, it's funny. It's something that you never see Kermit or Fozzie say. But it's hilarious. It's great. And then us, the meat bags, the humans, will play on Tuesday night with a show called Salin's Legacy. And this is all homebrewed stuff. Friday nights, we'll have a thing called Trashterpiece Theater, and basically we'll read old radio shows, like public domain radio shows, like cold read it, and people will send in money to do different accents and do sing your lines a different way or do impressions and all that stuff. And the cool thing is that the audience actually can interact with each show somehow. So people can drop characters, whether it be like legit character, story, people, or they can drop just ridiculous things that we have to fight. Like some guy drops like a called the fart holder, which is a beholder made of farts. It's like, okay, that's kind of stupid. Awesome. But
our interactive. It's like interactive improv.
It's interactive. Our DM is amazing. Danny Montooth. He is one of the co-owners of the channel. We'll have 16 characters that have been dropped, and we've got to fight, these 16 characters, and he has to go through, and some of these characters get like they're legit people, so he can use them throughout the campaign.
Wow. It's cool.
And he has a mind like it's amazing. And so we have to roll with that. Like we have to roll with whatever the stream gives us. And it might be an intense moment between two characters, and all of a sudden you get like, I don't know, Fozzie the Bear, dropped in, making a stupid, fool of himself. And we've got to roll with that, but then still kind of stay in our mindset of what's happening. And it's wonderful. It's great. And it's great improv. You said improv. It's a wonderful improv exercise.
Yeah. How did you, just real quick, how did you become a part of that?
Yeah, so the guys that we knew them from Disney. They're friends of ours through Disney, and they knew that I was playing D&D, and we had talked to them, and we watched some of their shows, and then they had reached out to us. Haley, my wife, also plays. She DMs more than I do, and then so we're both head first nerds in this community. So yeah, they reached out to us. We had a couple of Danny was wondering, he is, hey, I'm making a new campaign. I want, people who kind of understand the game. Would you guys be interested? And we're like, oh, heck yes. And 2 years later, we're still on this campaign. We've got 85 episodes.
Cool.
And man, it's still going. So,
all right. Well, last thing, if you want, where can people find you? Maybe if you have social media pages, they can follow your career and the things that you're doing.
I am terrible at posting my career, but you can find me. I'm on Instagram at jchavers32, JCHAVERS 32, and then I'm on Facebook. Justin Chavers. You can find me there. Come say hi. Like I said, I'm terrible at posting things, but I always like interacting with people. So, cool. Awesome. Feel free to ask me anything or pick my brain. I'm an open book.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. I had a great time with this one.
Yep. It's a lot of fun, man. We appreciate it.
I feel like I talked so much. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good, man. Great. That's what you're here for.
That's what you're here for. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to Fantastic People. Please rate and subscribe wherever you find your podcast and follow us on social media. That's at Fantastic People Pod on Facebook, at Fantastic_People Pod on Instagram, and at Fantastic People, no E, on Twitter. We'd like to say thank you to Alex Edmondson for our artwork. We hope to see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.